Hello, everyone. My name is Seva, um, and today I'm going to talk about one of our stories with clients where we are using some AWS infrastructure and as well as Spring. Hopefully, you're familiar with Spring. Maybe you can raise your hand if you're writing some Spring applications. Yeah, that's really nice. By the way, how many UI developers are here right now? Okay, so if you heard reactive and you have kind of different understanding from the backend developers what reactive means, but right now you will see the same thing there in the code. So a couple of words about myself. So I'm working at Grid Dynamics, and as well I'm a program committee member of Heisenberg Conference and JPoint Conference, which are mainly organized in St. Pete and Moscow in Russia. And if you want to tweet or ask any question, please do that through Twitter or Telegram, whatever you prefer. And a few words about our company. So we have more than 1,000 employees across the world, and we have distributed teams. We have different clients around the world. Most of them are US clients. And we are growing. So if you have some questions about what are the projects and things like that, check out our booth. We'll be happy to answer. How many of you guys are using AWS? All right. OK. And how many of you are using some reactive approaches while writing some code? OK. Not many, but anyway, we'll talk about this today. So let's talk about it. So I'm going to cover the use case where we will use AWS and Spring Reactor, as well as I will begin with some simple case where we don't have any reactive approach implemented. But anyway, we wanted to build something asynchronous and be kind of fashion. And after that, I'm going to talk as well about testing, how we can test such things. And later on, I will talk about some tools around this reactive backend world. So probably it will be interesting for you. And everyone right now, they are building microservices, and that's kind of mainstream. And I'm not sure how many. I guess most of you are heard about microservices, and most of you may be writing them. And you know that all of these microservices, they are trying to communicate asynchronously. So you don't have to worry about blocking stuff. So it's stuck. Let me do this. That was a nice picture. Well, let's do this. It's nice to have something in backup. So, as I said, everyone's just trying to build something asynchronous because it solves different problems, and that's the thing I want to cover today. Because people are trying to build asynchronous stuff in a very different forms, and everyone right now as well going to the cloud as this balloon. So we are using AWS, Google Cloud, Azure, or whatever. But for developers, cloud is mainly like this, right? And maybe you can build something similar at home and create cloud at home. I don't know if you want to. And let's imagine that we have a client who has kind of very strange requirement to build a magic hat application. Maybe you've seen a man just near the entrance who just did some tricks and things like that. So, and as well, we have some requirements that this app has to be built on top of AWS. It has to be a microservice. with the Spring inside. It's pretty clear, I guess, and that's easy to develop, right? So let's imagine that we have a magician and a hat which can give us different outputs, and we have an audience who interacts with this magician and whispers different spells to him, so he kind of proxies that to the magic hat, right? So once we whisper some spell, this magician gives us some ID. So because he has limited capacity, but the audience is quite big, so he can, by this ID, the audience can get the result from this magic hat, right? So, and for some person it will be a good price, and for other person who spells another spell, it will be just some empty stuff. As I said, a magician has limited capacity, and let's take a look how it could be implemented in the Amazon infrastructure with some queue. So we have a REST controller with some post mapping, which actually accepts the spells which we are casting to, and as well as it has get controller, which accepts our ID, which we are giving to the magician, so we can get the result after he does his job with the hat and things like that. So once we get the spell from the audience, we put the spell into the queue like a message. We are using here like queue messaging template, which is kind of built in Spring Cloud. Maybe you've used, whoever used Spring Cloud. All right. So Spring Cloud is kind of wrapper around different Amazon infrastructure and others cloud infrastructure, which allows you to interact with like something internal there, like queues, like SNS things, like databases, NoSQL databases, and other. So this queue messaging template actually allows you to post the message into the queue. This is the way we can build our SQS client. I'm using word SQS. This is just the queue in Amazon. That it is. It's just simple queue service. That's how they call it, everything. By the way, if you see something like beginning with S in Amazon, it just starts with simple. So how we build this queue message template, we just get our SQS client. It's a synchronous client because we want to build something asynchronous, and it just accepts. As well, we have to listen to the queue, right? So Spring Cloud allows us to do this with some annotation. But if you will go to the documentation, like if you will type to Google, and if you will Google like AWS SDK queues, things like that, it will give you some very, very long documentation how to use SQS client without any blows and whistles which Spring gives you. So this annotation actually subscribes the kind of method to the queue by the name of this SQS queue. And as soon as the message goes into the queue, this method is triggered and it actually processes the queue. So as soon as we receive the spell, it just goes into this method and it calls Magic Hat service. It's a service which actually interacts with the hat, right? So we want to apply the spell and do something. And all the results we are going to cache in a hash map. It's just kind of memory of this magician who will just try to remember all the results from this hat and keep them for you. So if you come to him and ask him for results by ID, he will give you. So that's pretty easy for magician. Let's take a look how we can code the magic hat. So it's just a REST controller with some post mapping. which actually accepts spells from the magician and does not really tricky work, right? So if this spell contains some wording, it gives you a good result. Otherwise, it gives you a bad result. So as I said, we need to get the results from magician by using the ID, and this is how it works. And that's pretty simple. Like, right, we have a post controller, get controller for magician, and other than that, we have a post controller for magic hat. So, and behind the scenes, we actually have this queue, which is Amazon queue, right? And it's not really clear how to test locally everything. I mean, you know how to test Spring Boot locally. It's easy. You just need to write Spring Boot test annotation, and here it goes. But as for running the queue from Amazon locally, it's not really clear. There are like ways you can start up like local stack, but for unit tests, will you do this? I don't know. It's really hard to do this from the first side, but you can use the thing called test containers. Whoever used test containers at your work? Cool, nice, nice. Yeah, for others, if you have something to test, like if you want to run the Docker image with something, it could be a database, it could be a queue service, it could be some service from the cloud provider. You can use test containers, and it will be easy for you to run it. You just need to add Gradle dependency, just write the rule, which actually runs the container itself. It's just one single line. You just need to provide which kind of container you want to run. In our case, it's a local stack with SQS. And after that, you can use this like in your tests. It could be unit tests, it could be integration tests, whatever you want. So you can use that. And you don't have to monitor and track when to shut down the Docker image, which actually will start by running this rule. So this is the really easy way how you can test the application which was described before. But how it looks like? It looks like we have a post, we have a response, we have a get, we have a response, and let's say we have a lot of magicians. Like let's imagine we have a product which has a lot of services like that, which are communicating with each other through post and get, like asynchronously, right? They call it asynchronously. So you have like 5 of them, more and more, and you can imagine how many lines of code you want to write just to get the simple result from the hat. And you have to manipulate with the queues just to be asynchronous. So that's really painful from the development perspective, and as well as it's painful from the business perspective, who actually pays for each message in the queue in Amazon infrastructure. So let's think about like how we can solve this, at least how we can make our life, developer life, easier. There are some ways to do this. One of those is Apache Camel. Whoever used Apache Camel? All right, guys. Okay. So someone smiling there. It's like because it was painful for you to use that, or no? You like that? Okay, got it. And other way is to use Spring integration. So they allow you to write easier the code which interacts with the queues and do this message flow inside just easier without like tricky manipulations with removing the message, reading the message, and yeah, it has very nice DSL, and it makes your life easier as a developer. So whatever, if you've never tried this, you just can do this. Like, at least maybe it will be useful for your current project. And there are some other tools, I believe, which does the same work. So Camel, as I said, it allows you to connect to SQS like just kind of route. It is about routes. So it connects to SQS, and you can just listen to this queue and like go through the pipeline and do some actions, like you can send the get, post, or whatever HTTP requests, or you can filter, or you can process the message in any way you want to. And you can build as much routes as you want, so you can combine the routes inside your app. So this is how you will do your message flow inside. But you will have routes everywhere, so it's just, well, you will have an app which has a lot of routes inside. And as for me, it's kind of painful, but maybe for you it was not. But when I see this, it's like really complicated, especially if you're building something on top of these routes, some libraries which are reused inside other projects or inside other microservices. It is hard, you know, to think about it. So can we do better? That's my question. And yeah, of course. So there's like Spring Boot and Spring Reactive. Spring Reactor, sorry. Whoever used Spring Reactor already? Okay, good. So let's talk about that. How we can do the simple, actually the same thing with these technologies, and how we can make our life easier. So the global thing, which actually is not the same as in our REST world, is a new controller, which called web client. And it's not the same as a REST template, but it's different. And other than that, you have to include a Gradle dependency, which allows you to work with Spring web plugs and Spring Reactor. But and I believe Josh Long will talk about this in the evening today, about how to use this. I'm not going to deep dive into much details. What is this and how to use that? But anyway, I will try to give you a highlight picture how to use this in a particular example I gave you. So how our magician, reactive magician, could look like? It should have this web client. Web client is actually built kind of the same way REST template builds, but yeah, it accepts base URL and it has a builder. Once we have it, we want to call the magic hat, as you remember. It's just the same, like web client, post, URI, whatever. And the thing which actually something kind of new, it's body to mono. It means that we want to get the response and move it to mono. Mono is something, it's a new abstraction for the publisher. So it can be one or zero elements. In our case, it's just one element. That's why it's mono. And there is another abstraction called flux. It could contain from 0 to n elements. It's like stream or observable or whatever you want to call it. And in our case, we just build this controller differently with using reactive approach given from Spring. Other than that, we can build, it actually can work with the REST API, which was a Magic Hat before in our old Magic Hat. So it can still trigger the REST API in the same way. You don't have to rebuild completely your services if you want to start using reactive. So you want to just take one service, rewrite it to reactive way. You can take another one. It won't break the whole infrastructure of your microservices. And reactive Magic Hat could look like this. Since it gives you just one result, it also mono. And how we can construct this mono result, since it's another object, it has method just, and you can put just one object, or you can create mono empty, so it won't give you result, or you can call it mono void in case you don't want to return anything. In our case, it's mono-just and words and some expression which actually makes a decision if it's a good result or not good result. And our magician, reactive magician, could work with this reactive magic cat and the previous version as well at the same time. And we actually don't need any queues, right? So we can interact like in a reactive way with within the services. And other than that, I told you that there is another abstraction called Flux, which actually allows you to stream data. So if you want to stream different messages or generate some data in subscribe without having any SNS or SQS or any other publish subscribe abstractions, which actually included in Google Cloud Platform and others, you can do this. You can build this Flux stream data, and it actually, what it does, it just generates the stream with different, like, hello, I'm thinking, and some timeline, and actually it will give you just stream of words with different timelines if you subscribe to that. And in this way, you can create real streaming platform or real streaming services which interact with each other, avoiding queues and things like that. And Magician can, as I said, that it can take this, it can subscribe to this Flux and take these events as a stream and actually just print those. So it's very, the thing I want to point you out is it's very easy to start using Spring Reactor and using Mono, WebFlux, and all of these things. It's just, you can just give it a try. Do you remember I was talking about routes in Apache Camel? And maybe some of you mentioned that they are UI developers, so it may be familiar to you. In Angular, at least, I know in Angular they have routes. So you can build the REST controllers in an old-fashioned way, like using MVC pattern. But as well, you can build a router function, which actually can take all the routes of your app just in one place. So it's very similar to what Angular has with the routes, but it is in the backend, and of course it's inside. It's pretty different. So as I said, you can build the same route with request predicate like get. It is like a get HTTP request, and it should have a handler which actually does the work, the functional work, like it should give you a response in our case, but inside the handler you can put all the logic you want to trigger after you're calling this route. So it's kind of body of REST controller API, right? And it's pretty easy to build it, right? So it could be component, and in case of component, you can test it, and so forth. And the good question, when I've started using the reactive approach with Spring, I was thinking how to test it, because it's like, it isn't really hard to debug, like with the same mindset that I had before. But these guys, they're doing a very good job, honestly. So they built some utils, which allows you to test these pipelines, which you can build with the reactor. So first of all, it's a steps verifier, so you can build verification for every new single step inside your streaming component. Other than that, it has a test publisher in case you want to simulate publishing to any like Flux or any like subscription you made. And the third thing is a web test client. It's actually like a test REST template. I guess you were using it for writing Spring Boot tests. So it's kind of the same, but it works with WebFlux. And it's very well integrated. So after I've seen this, I was thinking like it's good enough. Like I can live with this and I can test like that. And I don't see any problems. So in a kind of pre-conclusion, I want to say that it's good to use reactive approach instead of like building these queues and get and post APIs, and just that makes me crazy because I saw that in some projects, like how people are using this get post APIs, and it's really painful. I don't know, like why are they doing so? And I want to mention that debugging is not that easy as it was before. It is not like you cannot just put a breakpoint in some on some particular line. You have to put there some word which allows you to stop the JVM just in that line. And actually, Reactor provides you a nice bunch of tools which you can use for testing. I want to talk more about some tools around the reactive world. As soon as I get further and get more familiar what people are doing with reactive, I saw one more thing which is like quite popular right now. It's RSocket. It's another way of thinking of like communication within services. It's a protocol which allows you to do asynchronous processing in a real way without any blocking, and it allows you to build the channel where you can communicate the client and producer, and client can ask something from producer, and producer can ask something from the client. So it's kind of bidirectional channel. It's very nice, and I haven't tried this one on AWS infrastructure because they were not supporting it like maybe a half year ago. But I believe this is kind of future. And even before the conference, like 2-3 days ago, I saw the Twitter message that Spring Framework now allows you. It actually has a support of RSocket inside, and it's already available. So that something means, right? So as soon as we are talking about some asynchronous processing and some non-blocking calls, of course, it's possible to write blocking code for, like, if you're using this WebFlux model, you can call block somewhere because you want to wait, or someone can use this block inside because he or she wants to wait. So one person in Pivotal, it's actually, his name is Sergey, he created this block count tool. And actually, before just during the compilation of your Java application, it runs this block count, and it actually detects whether you have a blocking methods inside. And if you have, it will just fail the compilation, and you won't face with this in maybe production or during the integration test phase. So that's one of the really nice things I saw. And I was watching some YouTube videos actually from Spring platform, and one of the guys, this is like he told that at some point, probably this REST template and the old approach everyone's just using, it could be deprecated or not. I don't know. We'll see. But this is kind of spoiler. And if you want to be familiar with something which happens in Spring world, in the future world, in just right now, actually, you can just subscribe to Spring One platform in YouTube. I provided some links, and you can get them after the presentation. And it's really interesting how they are designing the system. And as for me, as soon as I was writing some Angular stuff before, and then I faced with the Spring Reactor, actually it's very, very similar to my mind, to understand how it works. So I'm thinking in a way like Java world is just trying to be like UI world, to be like a functional way, to be like kind of reactive way, and they are building this pretty fast. And honestly, it's up to you to decide if you have to use reactive or not. My guess, it's not the kind of certain answer. I don't have a certain answer for that, but it depends from your needs, your client needs, depends from what kind of experience developers have and other circumstances. But I would vote for reactive, of course. And I guess that's about it. I was pretty fast. I actually left a few links. They are available by QR code. If you wanna, there are links about RSocket, about Spring Reactor and others. You can follow them. Yeah, and I think that's probably it. I will be happy to answer any questions if you have so. Thank you. And our company has some prizes, for the questions, PlayStation. It's first or second version, I don't know, if you can recognize. And mobile power bank, if you're interested. Not really? Oh. Yeah. You want a power bank?
Hello.
Hey.
So basically, I'm interested what would be the real benefit of switching to reactive mode? Because you mentioned that it's a different paradigm, so you're moving to fully functional, and that comes with its own set of troubles, so the testing might be an issue.
Mm-hmm.
So why do it?
As I said, from business perspective, I see one benefit, instead of having queues in different microservices, which costs, in Amazon at least, you have to pay for each message in the queue. Let's say this one. Other than that, you have a capacity for each message, so you cannot post any message which exceeds 256 kilobytes. So if you want to it's still the case for someone. And as well, it provides you non-blocking interface, at least it should, you know? All right, next one, yeah. Just behind you.
Hi, do you have any prognosis how fast we receive drivers, reactive drivers for
databases?
Yes, SQL database.
Yeah, that's a good question. Already they have for a few databases, they have drivers. But if you will take a look inside the code, how they work, they actually, they have capacity, and it's not really non-blocking. So these drivers which provided, they are not kind of reactive, but they call reactive. So yeah, that's another story when it will be available. Because anyway, if you're talking about like if you want to read some files and read some database stuff, yeah, that's the end of Reactive, I guess. Yeah, but maybe Josh Long in the evening, he maybe has some insights about that. So yeah, but that's a good one. Okay. I guess that's it. All right, thank you guys. And you can come over just to get the prizes.